Welcome to Your Tru Awakening podcast for creators and leaders who are done performing and are ready to live what they know. I'm Sandra True, and this season is about one thing: moving from awareness into embodiment. Because insight isn't the problem. Most people already know what's true for them, they're just not living it. So each week we go deeper into the patterns, the nervous system, the truth beneath the surface, and what it actually takes to create a life that reflects who you are, that feels like you. And I'm super excited to have my guest today, Jon Paul Crimi. Is a breathwork practitioner, a teacher, trainer, and a transformational guide whose own journey began in addiction, rock bottom, and the search for something deeper than survival. After sobriety opened the first door, breathwork became the practice that truly changed his life, not just helping him heal, but helping him reconnect to himself. With more than 15 years of experience, Jon Paul has worked with everyone from high-performing CEOs and elite athletes to artists, celebrities, and everyday people seeking real change. His approach cuts through the fluff and brings breathwork back to what it truly is: a practical, powerful tool for nervous system regulation, emotional healing, and embodiment. And Jon Paul, welcome. I was like,
Thanks for having me, Sandra. I'm super excited to be here with you today.
yeah, so my intention was to speak about how there's so much self-aware people right now, right? There's like the self-awareness is like off the roof, but people still feel stuck. And I want to know, like, from your point of view and your experience, how does breath work become the bridge between awareness and transformation? And what does it really take for a person to move from survival into self-trust?
Wow, that's a big one right off the bat. So, it's
And
funny that you say people.
we'll tackle it throughout
Yeah,
this
let's
hour
do it.
today.
Yeah, so you said that people still feel stuck, and I love that because that's the question that I've always asked people when they come to me. When they come, I used to do a lot of private sessions. I don't do them that much anymore. Um, but when I train my students to take other people through breath work, I always say the simplest question to ask a client or a student is, where do you feel stuck right now? Because
Mhm.
everybody can kind of answer that, right?
Mhm.
Everybody has some area, some place in their life where they feel stuck. I've never had anyone go like, I don't feel stuck anywhere. I'm just here, right? Like it's kind of like I've never heard anyone say, I don't have an open mind. Everybody thinks they have an open mind. Even the most close-minded people you'll meet will be like, I have an open mind, and like, okay, come try this breath work. And they're like, oh no, that's not for me. I thought you were open-minded. What do you mean? Right. And so I like to tease people. The breath, here's a simple explanation of where it's stuck. What a lot of people are doing is they don't want to feel their emotions, right?
Mhm.
Or they only want to feel the good emotions. They only
Mhm.
want to feel joy and gratitude and love. They don't want to feel sadness and grief and depression and anxiety. They don't want to feel the bad emotions. But life and emotions, it doesn't work that way, does it? We
Mhm.
have to allow the bad emotions or the kind of heavy emotions to be felt in order to feel the other ones. You can't close yourself off, from sadness and grief and depression and open yourself up to gratitude and love. You have to let it all in. So
Mhm.
what a lot of people are doing is they're breathing really shallow up in their chest, and they're holding their breath all the time. Because when we breathe deep down into our belly, down into our diaphragm, that's where the emotions are sitting there waiting for us.
100%.
So they're
Yeah.
breathing shallow and they're holding their breath all the time. And I like to say, you have a breathing pattern for stress, for anxiety, for depression, for grief, right?
Mhm.
And when you are feeling those things, if you stop the breathing, you're not going to feel them. So if you change your breathing pattern when you're feeling those emotions, you can allow the emotions to be felt. So I
Mhm.
always say, like, change your breath, allow the emotions, change your life.
Yeah, so good. It's so good because because it's like we do top-down regulation a lot in therapy and therapeutic work and working with people analyzing, right? Breaking things down to try to understand. But that's at the level of pure mental reasoning. And
Yeah.
reasoning is just one part of what we are, when in reality we are a whole being. And to have access to our whole being, we must give oxygen to our whole being. And what I see also is like it's almost like we're a culture of head up people. I mean, and if you think about it, we have been indoctrinated since since we're five. Like, sit on a desk, How many hours are we sitting on a desk when like, I think it's like 7 hours a day for 5 days a week for 12 years on. Like, talk about getting people out of their bodies and into their heads, and just, you get celebrated for accumulating information and like being able to narrate it clearly. So we have a culture of just like thinking heads, and
Yeah.
and, and like there's a necessity at this moment where we are needing to reconnect with our wholeness, not just with a part of ourselves. And I think breath, and I was telling you before we started, like, no matter how I go into what healing modality and what teaching is, like, breath is spiritus, right? Every root word for it is speaking about inspiration, or consciousness or spirit. And we need that. We need that all the way down into our being. So I love what you're sharing. Please
Yeah.
continue.
It's so funny because you're saying everybody's up in their head is what you're saying, right? I like to break things down into the simplest of terms. It's like, and you were talking about the top-down regulations. Everybody's walking around, they're overthinking. That's where this anxiety is coming from now, right? Like everybody's got anxiety. I've got anxiety. Everybody out there. It's like, what's anxiety? It's this worry that you're creating in your head. It's this fear that you're creating in your mind, oftentimes about situations that aren't even happening or aren't even, you don't even know if they're going to happen. What
Mhm.
I love about the breath work, the style that I teach, and we'll get into breath work, it's an umbrella term, right? Like saying fitness. I like to teach circular breath work or conscious connected breathing. What it does is it actually shuts down part of your brain, the thinking, the overthinking part of your brain. Is a thing that can happen called transient hypofrontality, part of the prefrontal cortex of your brain, where the ego lives, where the critic lives that tells you you're not enough, right? It
Mm.
can turn that off and move you into your heart. And we can operate our lives from our hearts as well as our heads. But
Mm.
people have forgotten how to do that. They've forgotten how to operate from the heart. We have two operating systems. We have this one up here and we have this one down here. And I used to get clients all the time that would come in. This is a great example. You'll love this. And I go, okay, where are you stuck? What's the problem? They go, it's this guy. And I go, all right, 2 minutes to tell me about the guy, right? And they'll go, all right. And they're like lawyers arguing both sides of the case for the guy. Like, oh, well, he's really good and he does all these things. And then I'm like, what's the problem? Well, he doesn't do this and he's not this. And I go, okay, great. Let's just set the intention to breathe and see what, your heart's telling you. And what they do is they do this breath work and they turn off their head and their heart, they go into the heart, and the heart's telling them most of the time, like, this isn't the person for me,
Mhm.
right? This is not the one. They're really clear when they sit up. This is not my person. But what happens later, a day, 2, 3, a week later, the brain turns back on and it starts to kick in. And then the fear kicks in. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to go on those dating apps again. And it starts to kick in. But the heart knew what it wanted. And the
It
heart knew
always
that it was
knows.
fine being alone.
And the heart always knows because the heart is in the present. The heart
Yes.
when we listen to our heart, we can only be in the present. The heart is in the area of our lungs. Our lungs can only be fully expanded when we're in the now, when we allow them to fully expand, and that's our whole diaphragm. So once we take deep breath, right? Like, I taught yoga for many years, so for me it's pranayama, just breathing, and so
Yeah.
all of my sessions start with deep breath for the same reason, because the moment that you give yourself a moment of pure experiencing of this now moment, because it's the qualities of the present, right, which is like ease and joy and harmony. It's like, now you can hear
Yeah.
the truth of you, which is in your heart. It's always in the center. It's always in the center. And I feel in my own personal journey, breath has been just like the biggest gift for me. And I've been working with plant medicines so much, but they really work because I've been a yogi for so long before I started on that path. Before doing any plant medicine, I learned to breathe. And it's in that space where I started circulating the breath and doing all this different kind of breath and God body awakening breath and all these ways of expanding. All of a sudden I have restoration moving through my system immediately versus having to do so much healing because a lot of what people calling healing is also like them thinking they have more to do or more to gain. It's like,
Yes.
once I get this thing, once I heal, then I can get the next thing. And it's this addiction to healing, which is just a way, a very intelligent way of the brain trying to disorient or distract you from actually coming into experiencing.
Yes. A lot of people, I say the quality of your life is directly proportionate to the quality of your breath.
Breath. Mhm.
Right. And you're saying, I love what you're saying about healing. So there's a thing that I like to read a lot at the end of my class, this Colby Campbell quote, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'll probably butcher it, but it's like basically healing is saying, she's saying, healing is not becoming the best version of ourselves. Healing is letting the worst version of ourselves be loved. So
Mhm.
many of us have turned healing into becoming this super perfect version of ourselves. This is bondage. This is anxiety waiting to happen. Healing is saying every version of me deserves love, deserves
Welcome.
tenderness, deserves grace,
Yeah.
right? Healing is
Uh-huh.
showing up for yourself no matter what. And
Uh-huh.
people are like, they're, especially in this wellness spiritual world, they're trying to be fucking perfect all the time. How exhausting. How exhausting. I have to tell my students right off the bat, like when I do my trainings or whatever, look, we're going to be here today. We're going to be here for 4 days in this training. I'm not going to be perfect. I might be an asshole at some point. I'm a human being and
Mhm.
I'm going to try not to be an asshole, of course, but I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. And so that's exhausting to try to be perfect all the time, to try to show up as this perfect human who's never annoyed or angry or whatever, bored or
Yeah.
it's just not real. It's
Mhm.
not authentic.
And I think like so much of what the breath is allowing us to do is to accept what's real in the moment, right? Like
Yeah.
practice, the consistent practice, the gift that breath starts to give you over time is that you become so intimate with the moment that you are okay feeling safe in feeling unsafe. Right now I don't feel unsafe and I can be authentic about it. Like it's not a judgment on my humanity. It's an experience. It's like something that's moving through me, has nothing to do with who I am, with my real I amness, right?
Yeah.
We can start to have these emotions and have them be things that are moving through, not, it's almost like the destinations that we stop at, not like who we are, the wholeness of who we are. And I'm passionate about learning. I still have many mentors, many of my dear sisters and brothers that I continue to learn from are many of them. I'm consistently learning from them. And I feel like, I tell my clients all the time, like, make sure that whoever you're learning from is someone that has that little, wink in their eye of like there's a paradox.
Yeah.
Like life is a paradox, and someone that can be so authentic, that could be fully in the fuck of life with everything that's giving you, and also the realization that this is not all of it, right? Like that we are okay no matter what. And I think that
Yeah.
the allowing ourselves to come into fullness of existence especially with the breath is like how everything starts and how everything, of any type of inner or outer work you're doing that wants to be truthful is like breathe is there. So you want
Yeah.
to tell me a little bit about tell me about the kind of breath work that you guide people through, and how
Sure.
is that
So
interesting?
it's interesting. So you were talking about plant medicine a moment ago, and a lot of people have found me through plant medicine because when they go to these, ayahuasca, whatever the ceremonies or retreats or whatever you want to call them, they often have breath work at these things as
Yeah.
well, right? And so because they tell them, I guess, if the ayahuasca doesn't do it for you, then the breath work might, or the breath work will. And so they're expecting some big thing from the ayahuasca, but they're not expecting it from the breath work. And so they're usually blown away by the breath work, right? And then they come find me when they go search online. And so, I get asked all the time, well, what about, ayahuasca and breathwork? And I say, well, listen, I don't have any experience with that because I kind of did a lot of drugs and alcohol when I was younger. And I was basically a professional and got injured and had to retire young with drugs and alcohol. I had to
That's a funny way of putting it.
I had to quit early. I was like, I would
I was
retire
like,
really
you're
young.
retired.
I was like, I overdid it. So I don't mess with anything like that. But what I tell people is, listen, I can do this intense breath work on a Tuesday afternoon and clear out the stuff, whatever's going on, whatever I need to deal with, and then go pick up my kids from school. But I'm pretty sure I can't take a bunch of ayahuasca and then go pick up my kids from school, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the kind of one of the benefits of breath work. And there's a lot of people that come to me that want to have these same kind of ayahuasca psychedelic experiences, but they don't want to do that. So the breath work can deliver similar results. And it's different for
100%.
everybody and it's different every time. So, breathwork's an umbrella term, like saying fitness, right? There's all different kinds of breathwork. The style that I teach is circular breathwork or conscious connected breathing, which is an intense session through the mouth, very intense, laying down, never driving, never in water or near a pool or anything like that. And it brings a result different for everybody, but it's usually a big emotional release. And the
Mhm.
most common statements after my classes or sessions is, "Holy shit, that felt like 20 years of therapy without saying a word." Because people have all this stuff in their nervous system and they've done all the therapy and they've done all the work and they've done the 12 step and they've done this. And then they come to a breathwork session with me and they go, "Whoa, that like that, I can't even express that," or they're visited by people that are no longer with them anymore. All kinds of things happen, right?
Yeah.
And and so it's pretty powerful. I always tell people it's not what you think it's gonna be. It's not a relaxing meditation. It's a really intense and
Work.
I
It
and
is the
I'm pretty
best work.
intense. Like, I don't guide it in a soft, easy way. I guide it in an intense, emotional way. I'm
Mhm.
a former personal trainer, and I use that, right? I've had a lot of people come to me like, "I've done breath work with other people and nothing happened, and then I came to you and I had this massive awakening," because 'cause I'm pushing the energy really hard. And I also open myself up and get really vulnerable in my classes. I think that's my gift is I get really open and you can hear it in my voice. I start to get emotional. And I'm doing that because I want to give other people permission to get emotional, to let go and to open up.
100%.
And what comes from the heart goes to the heart. So I open up my heart in the class. And I think that's where my gift lies in breath work is to get open and vulnerable because I want to be moved and I want to move other people. I don't want to just teach a fucking class. I don't want to just sit there and say the same fucking thing every time. I want to have an experience in
Same.
the class.
Same. I do these really fun experiences here in Miami. I've been doing them for now like 5 years, where I explore consciousness through movement. But when I say explore consciousness, we're doing like the main thing that I invite people to do is breathe.
Yeah.
So I create the safe containers for people to release, to explore, to play, to have containers for. I'm really good at creating containers for transformation where we can feel, because it's like so much of what we have not been able to integrate is whatever we have not been able to feel. It's like the moment that we feel something fully to its extreme, then we can have a release, and those releases are what allows us to have a change in our identity. Versus if you just go, no, no, I have a lot of peers who are just psychologists, and part of my training is that. But it's like you can't get stuck at the level of masturbating on your story, because it's like I see so much
Yes.
of that happening in therapy. It's like, let me just go and let's find more reasons of why I
Yes.
poor me, poor me, poor me. It's like you're
Pour me, pour me, pour me another drink is what I say.
That's good.
You
You know?
gotta feel it. You gotta feel
You
it to
gotta
heal it
feel
is what I like to
it.
say. And
And go ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say you gotta feel it to heal it, and it's so funny because I have so many therapists now that are sending their clients to me. I thought I would piss therapists off and put all my things I say, it's like 20 years breathwork is like 20 years of therapy without saying a word. I thought they were all gonna get angry at me, and they
Yeah,
all send their clients to me
yeah.
so that the stuff can come up, and then they can process it and go and talk about it with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so powerful. I have been doing my own practice, and I have my daily practice of pranayama, and I've been 16 years of like having a consistent practice of matching my breath with my body, and then doing my lymph work. It's all breath, it's like
Yeah.
my morning practice is breath. In my meditation, there's a rhythm to my breath. Even when I'm chanting, there's a rhythm to my breath, right? Chanting is a way of your breath. So whatever practice I'm doing, like the main focus is the breath, because if you can guide your if you can guide your breath, you're guiding your brain, you're guiding your mind. That's the
Yeah.
power. And so much of what you're saying is just like, I'm just like, yeah, that's it. you know? Uh,
Yeah. How do you wanna check in and deal with your nervous system, whatever you're feeling, right? Like,
right?
our breath is both conscious and unconscious, and we get to decide which way we're gonna use it.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful thing. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful way to, like, to deal with our nervous system, to go in there and heal things that have been stuck in there forever.
Yeah, and also to know that it becomes, yeah, we go to these experiences or peak experiences, like going to a breathwork practice. And I just want to mention for people that I have had complete transformational experiences that have put me on different paths from breathwork practices, from
Yeah.
doing like breath work. Like, you go there to do work, and it's tiring, and it really requires so much of you. And like that have had like beautiful um images and things that felt like I need to do this, or connections very much because you're producing your own DMT, which is what the plant medicines are giving you. Producing, you get to produce DMT is inside of you, and breath work allows you to do it in a way that you don't have to go to the jungle or take time
Yeah.
off. And so I love that you're sharing that, because a lot of people get stuck in doing these plant medicines and making them go into them like that's where I go to heal, which is
Yeah.
like
How about we do it in our everyday life? How about
yeah,
we do it, like, when we have a fight with our spouse and we
yeah,
go lay down and then go breathe for 20 minutes and then
yeah,
come back and be like, "I'm sorry, that
yeah,
was stupid." Like, I have a shirt that I made that says, "I'm sorry for what I said before
yeah.
breath work." Like, I'm sorry I said that, like, that was so dumb. It's not important, and
Mhm.
let me use it as a tool in my everyday life.
In my everyday life. So even if you have a practice of learning how to breathe, which is something that we are, imagine if I do see a world where we'll be teaching this to children in school, learn to breathe and use their whole diaphragm. But that even if you decide to go and work with plant medicines, that the breath, the plants don't necessarily are like my go-to, right? But you have your breath that you come from, and that your breath becomes your come from practice, right? If we
Yeah,
can relate to each other with a regulated nervous system, because literally we are relaxed, right? Like the breath allows you to release and relax, to feel your
yeah,
feet on the earth, to be in the present moment, right? Not to be in your head thinking about what am I going to do tomorrow, trying to manipulate life to get the outcome. The breath puts you right here, right now, in surprise mode. And I think so many of us are resisting the fullness of the moment, which is the gift of breath, because we are terrified of not knowing.
yes,
To speak to any artist, that's the gift, right? We are moving through the arts because, or any adventurer, right? Or any person that loves vacationing, because we want to be in surprise. And the
yeah,
truth is that to have an authentic life is to be on a consistent level of being willing to be surprised by yourself, by the moment, right? That's the beauty what children carry, that awe and wonder and delight. It's all in being willing to receive the moment open. And these practices of breath, and people like you who are stewardshiping them,
yeah.
it's so necessary in a world that really requires good relationality. So I love what you're doing. I
I
really love it.
I really like what you were saying about people being stuck in their stories.
Yeah.
I say this, like, a lot of times in my class when I'm setting the intention in the beginning, I'll say, like, "What story or stories have you been telling that you're ready to stop telling, even if they're true?" Especially if they're true. Like, you cannot you see, when I do my workshops, when I do my classes, you can hear if someone's story is running them. They're running their life, right? You can hear it in the way they explain, "Well, this happened to me and that happened to me," and they're all worked up around it, and you can
Mhm,
see it. Or it's very simple, like, yeah, when I was 19, I was stabbed and I almost died.
mhm.
That's, part of my story, but it doesn't run me. It doesn't
Yeah,
own me because
and
I've healed that part of me. But a lot of people are walking around with these unhealed stories, and you can't write a new chapter in your life when you keep fucking staying stuck in the old story.
totally. I'll give people an example for anyone who's listening, because I'm a linguist and I'm forever scanning for language. When people come to me, I'm just like, phew, making a scan of like where they are. And what puts you in a victimhood space is whenever you're blaming, judging, or, just having no, like, just putting all of your power on somebody else doing something to you, right? Or having done something to you, versus You being in a position of power, just being able to tell your story as something that happened and it has nothing to do with who you're choosing to be, or perhaps it had everything to do and you're using it as nourishment for your life. When you
Yeah.
tell your story from a place of choice and of decision and being in your power, meaning being in your sovereignty about it.
Yeah.
And so much of how we are speaking is completely continuously hypnosis, right? It's like self hypnosis. It's like our unconscious is forever listening to what we're saying and saying, "You're right. Let me show you more proof of how that's
Yes.
true." Right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, and this person does everything, and people are always betraying me, and people are always doing this thing to me, and your unconscious is listening and saying, "I will show you." And the field, right? And the
Yeah.
because we're also in a co-creative field that it's saying the same thing. Like, yeah, I will give you more validation for how that's true. Right? And so
Yeah.
much of when we're in the judgment and when we are in the blame game and in the poor me story is because we have not given ourselves the experience to actually feel it and feel the betrayal and feel the grief fully and just let ourselves crack open into that, and hopefully in a safe container, oftentimes with a guide.
Yeah.
If you've never had any sort of like being supported by a guide, like it's really beautiful, to have somebody guide you into these things, because most of our parents are not good models of how to do that, right? And so it's that we get to teach each other how to be fully alive without going into without going into, again, masturbating on like what happened to me, and this is why, and this is the excuse of my life.
Yeah, I think the parent thing is tough. I think they're putting all their fears and experience and expectations on you as their child oftentimes, and they can't let you, grow and fall down and have the experience for yourself, right? It's like they're not always our best guides. They want to be, but
Mhm.
they have too much fear around it. It's
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, they're doing the best they can with what they have, and
I agree.
sometimes the best they can kinda sucks, but
Yeah,
it's like it's the truth of the reality, and we can grow beyond that, right? We get to change that story in our lineage, in our family. We get to change that story. So, I know I have changed the story in my family so
same.
that we so that we don't pass it on, right? And it's an amazing thing. It's like, yeah, it's a challenging thing. I've done a lot of work around my father and my mother, but mostly my father, and it's like every time the work would come up, I'd be like, "Really? This guy again? Like, I'm doing this work around this guy again? Like, how many times? How many times do I gotta do the work around this guy? Like, when you done?" Right?
Yeah.
And so you're not done until you're done. And I
Well,
finally felt like I was done, the last time I went home,
mhm,
and unfortunately, now he's like, now he's got Alzheimer's and dementia. His personality is not even the same. It's
mm,
heartbreaking.
yeah.
And so it's like, okay, this is what it takes. And some people never get that healing. We
Mhm,
can't wait for other people to say what we need them to say to heal ourselves. We have to do the work ourselves. So
boom.
like I have a process, I call it the transformational letter, where you write a letter to someone saying everything you want to say, everything you've never been able to say, and then everyone's like, "Oh, I've heard writing the letter." No, no, no. Hold on, let me fucking finish. Then you write a letter back from them saying everything you want them to say, everything they're never going to say, make them say it. And
Mhm.
then all the stuff comes up. And now we lay down and do the breath work. And
Yes.
so it's a really powerful thing. I call it the transformational letter workshop. It's incredible. It's powerful. I have it in a course online, and I
So
do it in
good.
my teacher trainings because I want my students to have the process
You know,
themselves, right?
My background is in I was a theater actor for a long time, so a lot of my work also comes from my years, a decade of embodiment work as a theater actor. And so sometimes I'll have clients tell me the story, when they're really stuck in like on being able to not on their little me story. Sometimes I'll have them play, like full on play, get up and show me, feel the entire body of their parent or their whoever they can't heal. They can't, they're stuck, and tell me their life story as them.
Yeah.
mother, tell me who, and I'll change the name and I'll start speaking to, like the mother's name, and it's like this whole like whoa, and then I'll start interviewing the mother, through them, and
Yeah.
like
That's powerful.
and so it's so powerful,
That's
and
similar. I was an actor as well. I studied, Meisner for 3 years,
beautiful
Meisner
mindset.
method, yeah, method
Amazing
acting,
method
yeah.
acting.
And in Meisner, we actually did family constellations, which is similar to what you're talking about,
Yeah,
where, someone plays you and someone plays your mother and someone plays your
it's
father and someone plays
that.
your
It's
yeah, and I
that.
did that with a room full of really good actors, and it
Yeah,
was like,
like,
"Oh my god," it was so
I mean,
intense.
I didn't do it through method acting through my classes with that, but I did it later. But as an actor, I was like, whoa. And I
Yeah,
do so much of parts work and parts work integration where I have people embody different parts of their psyche. And I do a lot of this in my events too, which is like being witness in like,
yeah.
acting as your fear or like, like acting as like the part of you that wants to fuck everything. And it is super healing to like give it a voice and give it an embodiment of it, and like people are like, oh my God, I still do those exercises because it's like something really powerful happens when we, instead of thinking about it, a voice lives something out. When we live something out. So like the act of writing, handwriting is so powerful,
It
right?
is. There's something magical that happens when you put that pen to paper. I don't know what it is, but I've been doing it for the last, I don't even know, 26 years since I've been sober, and I make my students do it, and it's so fucking powerful. There is
Yeah.
some magic that happens there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. When people come into my program, they write a letter to their higher self. And then they write a letter from their higher self to them, and then they'll mail it to themselves, and
Yeah.
3 months later they'll do the same, and like those, to see the process of like just writing those letter and what they wanted from the process and what they were willing to do, and it's just like it's people go through
Yes.
experiences of like
I have something similar in my training where I call it the love letter, where,
yeah,
you write a letter to yourself, but it's gonna show up 6 months later, right? And say
yeah,
like, "Yeah, where are you now? Are you holding to what you said you were gonna do? Are you doing the thing? Like, thank you for doing that training," like all the things.
yeah,
It's beautiful. It's a
yeah.
beautiful thing and
And
then you receive it and you're like, "Oh my god, here it is." Like,
and what I think it's good to speak about, it's almost that there is when you open yourself to speak as different parts of your consciousness, you are accessing a different information that's not coming from your own psyche. And I
yeah.
when I practice this again and again, and I'm shocked that, it's almost like I have this practice that I've started doing for my own life from a dream, and I started having journaling conversations with this character that I've through Jungian dream analysis, I gave it a name, and I've been having these conversations on my journal. Its name is Eros. Eros, like the impulse of creation that wants to bring everything together. And so I have these conversations with Eros, and then I read my months later, weeks later, what Eros said, and I'm like, that did not come from me. It's like it's so powerful. So when you're doing any type of work that you're writing as someone else or you're writing as your higher self, that we all have the capacity to be channels of information. That it's not just limited to our own little tiny mind. That there's a greater gnosis that is forever trying to come to us if we just make space. That's why like the practice of going into a breathwork practice or going into a ceremony of working with someone that's working at the level of consciousness and the body, like the work that I do is so powerful because you're creating a space for you to be heard, to be seen, to be witnessed, to be felt, right? And so how powerful is that? It's like there's a higher guidance forever present if we just let it in.
I love it.
It,
So I feel like that sometimes when I'm leading my class that some things will come out of me that I don't know where they came from. Like I'm channeling something, right? I'm opening myself up and then I see somebody going through something and I'll literally say something to that person who's just laying. I got 300 people in my class a lot of times, but I'll see somebody and I'll say, we all want somebody to show up and love us for who we are, the way we are, but we don't love ourselves for who we are.
Yeah.
the way we are. We teach people how to love us. We show people how to love us by how we love ourselves.
Yeah.
And how we love ourselves is how we show up for ourselves and do the hard work.
Yeah.
Right now, every breath you're loving yourself, you're doing the hard, and then they'll start crying. And I'll be like talking to this one person out of
Right.
300, and
Uh-huh.
they'll start like, they'll feel it. And they don't know that I'm 5 feet away talking to them, but I am. And they're like, and they'll come up to me afterwards, like, I felt like you were talking to me, like I was,
Uh-huh.
but I was talking to everybody because everybody in the room needs to hear it.
Uh-huh.
Everybody in the room is suffering from this lie, which is, I'm not enough. I'm
Uh-huh.
not good enough. Everybody suffers from this lie. I don't know why. I don't know where it's born inside of us, but
Uh-huh.
everyone suffers from that lie. And so I can go around the room and whisper in everyone's ear, "You are enough. You are good enough."
Uh-huh.
Right? And like they all just crack open.
Yeah, I mean, I have something so much to say about why we think that we're not good enough, right? Because that's not the normal for other societies. Other societies do not separate themselves the way we separate ourselves and have this over independence and block ourselves off from nature and try to accumulate nature and it's like there's fences and my head is here it's
Yeah,
like
we're disconnected from everything. We're
yeah.
isolated and we're disconnected, and,
Mhm.
it's sad.
Culture
I worked with a
circle.
lot of celebrities and famous people. I was a sober companion for many, many years to rock stars and actors, and, they isolate themselves. They get all these things, all this stuff that they wanted, the fame and the money and the big house and the Oscars, all the things, and it's just like they just build bigger walls and taller fences and isolate themselves off, and then they don't trust anyone, and they don't know who to trust.
Mhm.
And then they start, down this really terrible road a lot of times. Not always, not all of them. Hopefully, they pull themselves out of it or somebody comes along and helps them.
Yeah.
But it's just like it's not what you think it's gonna do. You
Mm.
see, people much happier with much, much less, but connected to their family, connected
Oh
to
my
the
god.
earth, connected to nature and, the people around them. You see people much happier with that.
Yeah. Have you ever had an experience in a different country, where you saw that?
Yeah, of course. I've traveled the whole world. I've not the whole world, but I've traveled quite a bit, and I spent a lot of time. I spent 2 years down in Brazil, working on and off, and I've been all over South America and
Mhm.
all over Southeast Asia and all over, and some of the poorest countries in the world where people have nothing. They're living in a little lean-to, with not even four walls, and they're happy,
Like,
like
happier.
genuine happy,
Yeah,
like
and I'm
with
asking
n
because the same.
nothing.
Yeah, because it seems like for us with our judgment mind of having things as thinking that is the happiness and accumulating, thinking that's gonna give us happiness. And like I can think of being in this tiny little town in Nepal called Shantinagar. It was I was there with a company named Build On, and we were there to build a school. And these kids had like one bowl for like the whole school, the whole village, and they were bound workers until like 2017, so like the year they were just starting to build this little village. And we went like, I'm gonna go help, I'm gonna go. And like my idea was like, I'm gonna go and give this school. And the truth is like they had I came back with like the shift of like they had so much. I had never seen kids be so happy and so joyful and play.
Yeah,
They had, and everybody's tending to all the kids like it's all the mothers are the mothers to all the children. Same thing like coming up a hike on a mountain in Peru, where it's just like there's all these little children are there, and we're having dinner at this like hut. And it's like the joy of how much like the idea of muchness of having, we have like a complete distorted idea of what that
it
is.
it's wild. I give my kids a hard time. I don't say this to them, but I say it to my wife, which is, these kids complain like, "I'm bored, I have nothing." I'm like, "They have computers and iPads and TVs, and outside they have trampolines and slack lines and tree houses and slides and all this shit." I had none of that growing up. I had a Victoria's Secret catalog in the woods behind my house. That's what I had growing up. That's all. I'm joking, but, it's like it's like you don't need all these stuff.
You
You
need
don't need it.
relationship, like,
Yeah,
well, the truth is that when I come back and from being in the Amazons and seeing how the tribes that I study with, how they live and have how everybody gathers in the circle, everybody chants, everybody. That's how we do the trauma healing work, by the way.
yeah,
And like that's how our ancestors have done it. We gather in circles, we drum, we chant, we make, we enact things, and that's the releasing work. That's why I intend to bring when I do my experiences, right? It's like our traumas and our wounding is like they start with people and they heal with people. Like we need each other. And so much of like the biggest healing happens when we can be in good relationship. And to be in good relationship with someone else, you must be in good relationship with yourself.
yeah.
Like if you're not breathing well, you're not even gonna know self.
Well, and your greatest wound can become your greatest gift, right?
Is
You know, my greatest wound growing up was my sensitivity, that I was too sensitive, that I was too
same thing.
vulnerable. And I tried to hide that because I grew up in Boston in a really tough area, where it didn't allow for that. And it's like now that's a gift. That's one of my greatest gifts, is that I just allow my sensitivity, I allow my vulnerability, and it really sets me apart in what I do and who I am. And so your greatest wound can become your greatest gift if you're open to it, if
Yeah.
you're willing to do the work on yourself.
Yeah, which is like I do a lot of parts work integration in my work, and what nobody speaks about much, but it's very known by people who study philosophy and ancient wisdom in this way, is that you hear a lot of the shadow, but there's also the golden shadow, and the golden shadow is the gift that is inside of your wound, your repression, which is what you haven't seen. The healing of that is the expression, and like the moving of that is like the flowering of that is what allows it to be expressed for everybody else to enjoy, right? So it's almost like n- our wounds are the our responsibility to work on, because usually the hidden gifts in there are also for everybody else, right?
Yeah,
The gifts that they're hiding are service. You want to know your purpose? Look inside. So many people are trying to find it outside, and like, and it's actually it's what it oftentimes is the pain that and it's like the gift that and it's so intimate. It's like it's you. Our
yeah.
purpose ends up being us, being in good relationship with knowing who we are. Mhm.
When I got sober 26 years ago, I learned pretty early on that, all these things that happened to me that I did too, like, the things that I was ashamed of, that the horrible things, all of it become very valuable to help somebody else. They
Mhm.
become these, like, other things that I can help other people who are struggling with it,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, that's alchemy, right? I'm turning this painful stuff into gold that's gonna
Mhm.
help somebody else. Like, me too. I've been there. I've done that. I've felt that. I've done that shit.
Mhm.
And let me tell you how I healed that. Like, so that's alchemy. I've turned that into great gifts to help other people.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to my client about just recently, just past week, to one of my client about how, it's like the ghost you don't want to look at under the bed when you're little. And it's like terrifying. And you're terrified of looking under the bed because you got that, and it takes so much energy not to look under the bed. But the moment that you start looking at it, it's almost like it starts losing its power,
Yeah.
and you start looking under, and then what that does is that's courage, and you have a new sense of self. And yeah, we were exploring this because it came up and so we followed the thread of that. And he's like, I think I stopped feeling scared when I started looking. And it's the same thing that so many people, and so many of us, we abandon ourselves because we don't want to look because it's too scary. We don't wanna feel because it's too scary. But
Yeah.
it's like the moment that we can face it, it changes something about how we feel about ourselves, right? Because that is the process of coming home. It's like I am able to have the fullness of acceptance of my story of who I am. And that's so magnetic, when you walk into a room and you have that as a part of your being, like you can hold all your parts, not just the pretty presentable parts. Right?
Yeah.
That becomes magnetic.
we build it up into a much bigger monster than it really is, and
Mhm.
once we start to pull it apart and look at it.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. That's true. If somebody is listening right now and they're like, okay, but how do I start accepting parts of myself? And how do I start looking at what's the ugliest part if there's a lot of shame? And what would you say to them?
Well, I'd say the first thing I like to say to people, or the last thing I sometimes end with too, is like, work hard on yourself, but don't be hard on yourself. The
Mhm.
the first thing is like, hard work is important to work on yourself, but it's also like you're never going to be perfect, right? When we sign off on this podcast, I'm going to go make some mistakes. I'm sure of it. There's never going to reach a place in my life where I'm not making mistakes. And so can I just stop beating myself up for those mistakes? Can I just love myself through my mistakes and realize that that's still going to keep happening, and can I just be a little more kind, a little more loving to myself,
Mhm.
and 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 just and know that that's okay. And
Mhm.
also, I just tell people, like, be willing to do shit that you weren't willing to do before. If you want a different experience, if you want a different life, you have to be willing to do something different. You have to be willing to try something different.
Mhm.
So if you've never tried circular breath work, I might not be your guy. There might be somebody else that's better suited for you, or I might be your guy. I don't know. But like, I'm like, come try it and just find out for yourself
Mhm.
and see what's there for you. See,
Yeah.
like, explore it,
Mhm.
explore the things. Listen, when I was told, I thought breathwork was so stupid. Like, I would, I don't know if you know who I found breathwork through the actor Matthew Perry, was a very close friend of mine, and he had done it with some guy, and he told me about it, and I was like, "Dude, that sounds ridiculous. Like, that's so stupid, right?" And he was like, "Well, I bought you a session because I want you to go experience it, and you're my only friend that's open-minded enough to try this shit, and so we can talk about it." And I was like, "All right." So I went and I did it, and it was a different kind of breath work than what I teach today, but it was still transformational. It still created all this awakening in me and shifted something. And I went down a rabbit hole and started doing all this different kind of breath work, all these different kind of things,
Mhm.
and started like, people saw a change in me, and people were like, "Are you medicated? Why are you so happy? Why are you so present?" And I'm like, "I'm doing this fucking weird breathing thing." And they're like, "What is it?" And I was like, "I don't even want to talk about it." And they're like, "Tell me." And I'm like, "All right, you lay on the floor and you breathe in this way." And they're like, "Show me." And so I started having to show my friends and my clients this shit. And I didn't want to show people. And then this woman was like, "You gotta teach a class at my studio." I'm like, I've never taught a class before. And she's like, "You'd be amazing." So I taught a class, and like 14 people came, and Matthew Perry was one of those people. And he's like, "Dude, this is," he goes, "This is your gift. This is what you're supposed to do."
Wow.
And I was like, "I don't know, dude. I don't want to be the breathwork guy." And he's like, "No, this is it." I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional because I
Mm.
can remember it like it was yesterday, but it was 15 years ago, and he encouraged me to do it. And then a couple years later, it was sold out with like a couple hundred people and all these famous people there. And Matthew was there, and he's like, "I told you, see, I told you, like, here it is."
Oh my God, I love this so much.
And so you just don't know. And sometimes I say this all the time now. It's like you have to give up your dream to follow your destiny. Like, I had a dream of being an actor or having a
Yeah.
TV show, whatever, and I let go of that dream to help people and to step into my destiny. And it all makes sense to make me this great breathwork teacher, because all the things, the trainer, the actor, the writer, all the things come together to make me really good at what I do today
Oh my
and to
God.
help other people. And I don't, it's against I'm selfish and self-centered inside, and I work against that to be the best version of myself.
Ah.
Because when I'm helping someone else, that's the best version of me. That's
Mhm.
that's me tapping into my higher power, my source. But it's not my natural instinct,
Oh my
sadly.
God. So good. I want to share so much about what you're saying, and it's so moving because it makes me think of, first of all, I'm so loving that what you just shared. Like sometimes you have to let go of who you want to be to step into your destiny. Like that's so powerful. And it like it really moved the strings of my heart because I remember I was working nightlife and I was just in New York, like just doing the hustle life. I was seeing clients, privates for yoga. I was, and I was studying a kind of yoga that's called Katona yoga, where you support people a lot and you create balance within their body, and they're holding in these poses, and they started to, and they would just continuously have these open moments, and I would just ask questions because of my introspective mind as an actor, and doing script analysis, and I would just start to we learn how to read the body, and so I would ask questions, and people would have this like emoting releases, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm gonna be a coach, this is so
Yeah.
cheesy. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"No," like, "No." I was like resisted it. I was like, "I'm gonna be this is so cheesy. I'm supposed to be an actor," but it was
Yeah.
just like the knock of my destiny, and I was just like, "Ah." And I kinda like, I resisted it for a while, and so, like, that was so beautiful that you shared that because it brought that back of like, yeah, like, there is something that and really good listening, right? Like really good listening. It reminds me of like doing so much voice work and working with one of my teachers, right? Sean, he was doing this. I was like, I want to get rid of my accent. He had no interest. He's like, I'm going to teach you how to breathe. And that meant change my life.
Yeah.
He changed my life because what started to happen was that once you start to breathe well, you can't lie. You have to get so honest with yourself that you just like become so present. And when you make that your practice, it's like I was like, "Wow," I was just closing off relationships and moving chapters and having this like drastic changes in my life simply from breathing.
Yeah, the first time I ever experienced it was not in actual breathwork class, it was in an acting class where I was doing a scene and I was, like, right on the edge of something, and my teacher was like, "Stop, right there, take a deep breath." And I took a deep breath and I lost my
Yeah.
shit, and
Hmm.
I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah.
Like, she knew that I was holding my breath and that once I breathed deep and I was gonna feel the emotions and I broke down. And it
Mhm.
was really hard for me because I'd been keeping it all together and holding it all in. I think I was 22 at the time from Boston,
Mhm.
now in LA and not wanting to feel the feelings, but trying to be an actor. It's like, that's fucking but
Yes.
I didn't wanna feel the feelings of everything that happened to me through my life, all the horrible shit, but I wanted to be an actor. It's like, that's not how it works.
It's funny how that works, right? I came into the arts also, and it's so beautiful that you share about your sensitivity because it was like the big thing in my life, and I didn't grow up with my parents were in my mom was a different country and the whole thing. And for me it was just like I had to keep it together because I was the annoying kid being taken care of by other caretakers because I had so many emotions. It
Yeah.
was such a big thing, and it's like that's what drew me to the arts, but there was so many years of going through my own challenges and shame and coming to the arts with the same thing. I don't want to feel any of that, but then also not knowing how not to stop thinking about all of that and being in the story of all of that. And for people that that might think that we're judging, like I'm sure both of us when we speak about victimhood identity is like because we've been in it. I can see it.
Yeah.
I've been so deep in it.
For
That's why I
sure, you don't
compare
know until you come out the other side of it.
it. Yeah.
I worked with a dialect coach too. I had a very thick Boston accent when
Yeah.
I moved to LA.
Yeah.
It's like, "We wanna go down to the fucking bar and get wicked hammered, we're gonna drink some Jägermeister, and then we're gonna get in the car, we're gonna drive home, it's gonna be wicked pissa, let's go, guy, come on." So I was, like, so thick Boston accent, and I had to work on that, and
Yeah.
it's there still sometimes, and it's like you never really truly lose where you come from,
Nor do I want
right?
to.
No.
Now it becomes like it's like I love accents. I love my accent. I love listening to it, and I love having listening to your accent. You said something that I wanted to touch on because we were almost getting too excited before the conversation, and that's speaking about that we also have a dark side and the
Mm.
importance of honoring that, right? And so I was like, hey, and you do jujitsu, you do BJJ, which I relate to because I had my years of doing BJJ that I really love. And you were saying, yeah, because I love how that, when I'm in that space, I feel like can you share a little bit of the, about
Sure.
that?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's the yin and the yang, right? There's the dark and the light, and they both go together. We can't have one without the other. And I think too many people, especially in our space where we do the work that we do, they're just trying to be light. They're just trying to be love and light all the time. And I'm like, That's exhausting. That's not authentic. That's not real. You
Mhm.
have this other side of you too, right? And it's like, where is that other side? Are you pushing it down? Are you spiritually bypassing? What are you doing with it? And for me, like, I get to go to jujitsu and I get to strangle people, and it's really fun. Like, and I get to talk shit and with my guy friends and the macho, and there's a lot of women at my jujitsu too, and they talk shit with me, and it's so fun. And I love that side. I love to like grab somebody and throw them down on the ground and choke them or whatever in a safe way and in a constructive way, in a beautiful, positive way that we get to do this thing and we learn these techniques and these skills that are just savage. Like it's just,
It's
and then
so
the other
savage.
thing of that is it's just a confidence that that gives you, which I walk through the world in a different way. I don't have to fight anybody. People, I've had people, start with me, start a fight with me or want to like talk. And I'm like, bro, you don't even know. Like I would strangle you in 20 seconds without even breaking a sweat. Like I don't even have to go there with you. I don't need, there's no need.
Yeah. When I was starting, I was telling you about my jujitsu journey. But when I started training for jujitsu, I was training like just with black belts because it was like 2020. And my partner at the time, he was friends with the Gracies. So it was just like the Gracies in New York and doing all this like kind of underground training. We would still go train. And it was so safe.
Yeah.
It was so safe because I was like doing all the black belts and like they were just and all I could pay attention to was like their breathing as a yogi, right? And I
Yeah.
just loved that my body, because of yoga, I loved angles. And I was like, this is amazing. Like I love getting into all these angles. This is great. And
Yeah, you
like,
understand the biomechanics of the body, right? And like
you
this, you could be a 110-pound woman and roll over a guy that's 180 pounds
just
if you're
so
using the angle and the leverage is
yeah.
correct.
It,
I roll with a lot of women because I'm a black belt and they feel safe, that I'm not going to hurt them. And,
Mhm.
that because sometimes a lower belt will hurt you by accident because
Oh,
they don't know their body well enough and they don't know what they're doing.
and they don't know how to control those energies yet. Because
Yeah.
when I moved
Yeah.
to Miami, I went to the Gracies here in Miami by Coconut Grove, and I was waking up. I love to practice really early, and I was like, I'm gonna stick to my BJJ. I really love it. And then I would get there, and everybody was I was a white belt,
Yeah.
and I was training, and there was like this viciousness, people just like wanted to come at me, and then I would feel that coming out of me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm here being a yoga teacher and like doing the thing, and
People are trying to work out their issues on you.
I was like, and no, but what was really beautiful is to what you're speaking about, like really feeling my animal, really
Yeah.
feeling like, wow, like just like I'm like I'm feeling like the beast in me, and like the delight of feeling having a container for it to let that out. I
Yeah.
think so much of the work that I play with, and I do these very playful experiences where we let these darker sides in, is because we need to have safe containers to release what is true in all of us so that it doesn't sneak out as unconscious behavior. Whether that is like writing your anger or going to a boxing class if you feel really pissed off, or just being able to release some steam by saying the truth with love, but making sure that you say it, like not keeping things inside of ourselves, because that is how we start to disassociate and bottle
Yeah.
things up.
Unexpressed emotions will always come forth in uglier ways. And what I tell people is if people are telling you like, "Hey, you're overreacting." I used to hear that a lot. "You're overreacting. You're over what am I? I'm no, I'm not. I'm not overreacting to the fucking, and I was overreacting because what was happening was, I had pent up, I had stuff inside of me from other past experiences that were coming out in situations. And so my reaction wasn't appropriate for the situation because I had all this shit, all this old stuff in my nervous system, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be in like the Starbucks line and you're waiting in the Starbucks line for a half an hour or whatever. And the guy gets up there and he doesn't know what he wants to order. And I'm like, get out of line. You get to the back of the line. Starbucks is the same all over the world, guy. You don't know we've been standing in line for 30 minutes. You don't know what you want. Get the fuck out of line. I'm kidding. I'm joking. But you know what I mean?
It's a
Like,
great example.
it's just a funny Boston example,
Mhm.
and it's just overreacting. It's the
Yeah.
stuff. But when I go to jujitsu, I get to clear it all out, and I'm like the mellowest guy driving home. When I do breath work, I get to clear it out. I'm like the mellowest guy. So I have all these places to express it. There was a time where I got to train with Hickson Gracie for a while, and he has a book called Breathe, and he talks about breathing in jujitsu and breathing with your movement and all this stuff. And I got to sit there and hang out with him and talk to him about the breathing and the breath work, this living legend, Hickson Gracie. Um, and it was such a gift, and we talked about the type of breath work that I teach and the emotions and him, having an
Cool.
experience with it. It's wild when you get to meet these legends who are like, yeah, I've done that. I know what that is, and we get to share different thoughts and different ways of breathing with each other. He's like, this is how I want you to breathe in the jujitsu. And I'm like, awesome. Like,
Mhm.
you tell me that like that. And I was holding my breath. Like, and one of his son was giving me shit, Crone Gracie. He's like, "You're holding your breath. You're the goddamn breathwork teacher." And I'm like, "Yeah, but when I'm trying to strangle somebody or they're trying to strangle me, it's a different thing." And he's like, "No, it's not. It's like you need to relax and
Wow.
breathe in the session, in the flow of the role."
Wow.
Because yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, wow, that's so good. That's so epic. It's like even being inside the work as somebody that's living the work, right? There's always so much to learn. Like that's the beauty of a really good teacher is that they're always learning. And so I love that so much. Just to close out our conversation, if somebody is if somebody's saying, okay, I don't want to be disconnected from myself in this moment, and maybe I can't find a breathwork practitioner for today, what is the first thing they can do with their breath to start to get closer to what's true in them right now?
Yeah, I mean, the simplest breath is easy. You just take a breath in through your nose, down into your belly, and let out a nice exhale, just a right? But the way I would teach it to children, I don't teach children, but if I was going to teach children, I would say just smell the chocolate cake and then blow out as many candles as you can. And that would put you in your parasympathetic and teach you start to rest and digest and to calm your nervous system down and to calm your body down. That's a really simple, easy breath. And I teach this. I'm online on Sundays on Zoom. I was doing it way before COVID. I was one of the first guys to ever do breathwork online that I know of. And people told me, you can't do this online. I'm like, yeah, you can. You can. I have found a way to figure it out to make it safe. And then once COVID happened, they were all like, wait, how do you do this online? Like they all changed their
I
tunes.
love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do it on Zoom every Sunday and I have a 5-day replay afterwards.
That's
So,
cool. Where can
yeah.
people find that link and find your work?
Sure. My website's breathewithjp.com. So BREATHE with WITH JP, not breath with JP, breathewithjp.com. And you can find that you can go to do the classes online and I'm on there all the time. And, come try a class and maybe I'm for you, maybe it's not for you. I don't know, but like just try it out, have an open mind. And if you can't make the live time on Sunday morning, which is 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, there's a 5-day replay. So I have a lot of people who sign up for the class who don't come to the live class. I usually have like 20, 30 people at the live class, but there's like hundreds of people who sign up all over the world that do the replay.
Oh, I'm so excited to try it.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time and the beautiful work that you're doing, JP. I had a lot of fun having this conversation with you.
Thank you. Me too. It was great. It was great speaking with you
Thank
today.
you to everyone who listened to today's podcast. If this interests you, if you want to keep hearing this kind of like truthful conversations that are about embodiment and connecting to your true uniqueness and the expression of yourself, subscribe for weekly notifications. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you guys soon.